afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Doyle, Operations Director of CTAM Europe. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm happy to introduce you today to Inga Alika. And Inga, this is the first time she's done a webinar for us, so a big warm welcome. Inga is founder and CEO of Alika Media and Tech, and alongside our very own CTAM Europe board member, Marco Frazier, who in his other life is CEO and founder of Screen Plus. We're scheduled today for 30 minutes, which includes time for a Q&A session at the end, so I will be short. Please post your questions via the Q&A button. As always, the recording of this presentation will be posted on the members only section of ctameurope.com. If you're not a current member, please email info@ctameurope.com for more details. Members have access to a monthly webinar and our live annual symposium and networking event once a year, and also webinars and podcasts from our colleagues across the pond at CTAM US. I'll also follow up by email about our fabulous annual executive management program, which was at INSEAD last month, and registration will be open soon for next year. So for now, I will go off screen and I will leave you with Marco and Inga. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that. And hello to everyone out there. I'm currently in Catalonia today, and it's Feast of Saint Jordi, which is an important feast day here. But we're here to talk about a unique challenge and opportunity that hasn't really been present in media before. Now we're in an era where we actually can segment and market, talk to, and tune in to 7 different generations. This is the first time that's ever happened. And to tell us a little bit more about the specific opportunities and challenges of that is Inga Alika. So Inga, you approached us with a couple of different hats. So you're currently leading the digital first strategy for Latvian public media, LSM. You are also the founder and CEO of Alika Media and Tech, your tech company. And you've got a very long and extensive experience and track record working with telcos like the TED Group and others. So you've got some particular expertise in this area. Tell us a little bit more about what we're looking at today.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Marco, for the rockstar introduction, I would say. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Yes, so the topic I am quite passionate about, actually, is how do we redefine the value and actually generate a future-looking media. And I have put some slides just to set some framework for our discussion with Marco and later on. And please feel free also to send your questions. I wouldn't say that I have a crystal ball and can answer all the questions, but yes, I think this cross-generational aspect is quite interesting. But to begin with, I always like to say, of course, that our industry in its disruption and it's fundamentally changing. And I think it's a super important conclusion in itself, right? So we all know that. And I always joke and say that we working in media and entertainment, we actually possess some kind of a superpower because we have managed a constant disruption for at least 2 decades now. And many reports actually point at that. And but why do we have this conviction that disruption is actually changing? To be able to say actually organization, and I have seen it in many boardrooms, that we have to innovate for the future. We have to be super clear on why. And I love to use a very simple framework to look actually at the disruption happening on several fronts at the same time. So the most important one is actually consumer. And I'm not talking about a data which already is shooting in our face, actually, that change is happening, but really trying to sense the new signals and trends which are just emerging and showing actually where the future customer will want to meet us and what are the growing demands. Of course, also technology, because everything is digital now, and it's not only anymore about how the content is being delivered, but also how the content is being experienced or how it's going to be discovered. And of course, competitive landscape, all this disruption brings new players, and also for many local players, it makes us to rethink how can we actually compete with the global players. And the boring bit, but still important, regulation. And here in Europe, I would say that it's very strict. So actually innovation in some way is a little bit slower than in other markets. And so I said that the most important part is audience and new customer behaviors, but actually who is our consumer in 2025? And as Marco mentioned, so this is quite unique year because we see the birth of a new generation beta who will be born from 2025, so this year until 2039. And together with Gen Alpha and Generation Z, they are going to reshape fundamentally all the businesses. But for the first time, actually, we have one screen, one content, but it's accessed by 7 generations. And each coming with its own value set and worldview and actually lived experiences. But just very quickly, Marco asked me to put it and remind a little bit because terminology sometimes really differs. So who are these 7 generations? So silent generation, or also a lot of actually marketing people call them traditionalists, born from 1928 until 1945. So very manual. So the first media was radio and print, and they were using landline. In some households were black and white TV. Then, of course, baby boomers who were like probably the most amazing actually consumers even now, right? So they are very predictable. They are heavy TV users, traditional TV users. All they kind of TV is a fireplace, right, at home. And so we all can relate. So this is my parents as well, for example. And then comes Generation X with the rise of cable TV and MTV culture, and VHS is being replaced by DVD and CD. And the first, let's say, digital shift is actually starting from millennials. And this is generation where I'm falling in as well, so I can relate very easily. And they are called also Steve Jobs generation because Steve Jobs gave us, let's say, iPods and upgraded our Nokias to iPhones, so the first smartphones and connected PCs, of course, and the first beginning of on-demand mindset. And then followed by Generation Z, who shifted very quickly and adopted a new technology. So they are absolutely smartphone natives. They are streaming is just their default, right? So Netflix and Spotify, multi-screen natives, they jump from one screen to another. So putting extra layer of expectations to us, and social media is an identity for them. So the same important one like in real life. And then Alpha generation, I have one at home, 10 years old. So by the way, the youngster ones, they really know what is generation. So they really very proud about belonging to one or another generation. So Gen Alpha, we're growing with voice assistants. They are also called YouTube Kids. Roblox, actually, it's also interesting. So they start to consume not only like produced content, but actually they co-create, right? So they co-create and the content which they are consuming. And now we are coming to beta generation. And let's say I don't have a crystal ball for sure to say what is going to be, but I was just watching Black Mirror. They have a new season on Netflix, and it seemed, let's say, very realistic. So it's generation beta. One thing for guarantees, they will the technology is going to be better and better, and capabilities are going to be expanded, and they are not going to just use AI. They will be expecting it everywhere, right? So they will be hyper-personalized generation, and we have to keep in mind then the tech adaptation is becoming also very quick for Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and of course also for the rest of other generational segments. But a little bit to zoom out, so how does it reflect on a global demographic numbers? If we look globally, then 66% of the global population is under 40. So it's also just let it think. So it means that actually starting from digital generation with 40 will be, yeah, they are Gen Z, right? And then Gen Alpha, so they are absolutely digital natives. Europe is the oldest region, so with over 25% are over 60. And it means that the speed of innovation is a little bit kind of slower here, but it gives us also advantage actually to look at what is happening in a more, let's say, dynamic and younger markets.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Inga. It seems that each of these generations definitely has their own specific characteristics, iconic products, iconic events that happened during their formative years and lifetimes. How are all these shifts affecting consumer behavior?
Yeah, of course, like as you can see, so the slower is basically the oldest generation. So they will adapt let's say they will adapt the technology a little bit slower, right? And for digital natives, it just happens instantly. Do you want me to continue with some slides or?
Yeah, yes, please. Absolutely.
Now we can also, of course, discuss here, but I don't have too many, but just to conclude, so we are talking about audience fragmentation as well, but it's also, we are not only competing just on the content, we compete also, of course, on time and emotions and the ease of access. And this actually struck me a bit that with multitasking, we consume tech and media now for 13 hours daily. And so kind of the calculation is that we don't live anymore 24 hours per day, but actually 32 hours a day on devices and contexts. And really last slides before we come into our discussion. So the speed actually, just to give a context, right? So it's the speed of technology is only going to accelerate. And here I'm going back to the first slide about disruption. So we are not talking anymore about industry being disrupted, but actually the speed of change is just accelerating. From one side, it actually gives us amazing opportunities because we can reach with all the technology and internet, actually audiences much faster, right? So that if we look at ChatGPT, it took them 1 month to reach 50 million users. But at the same time, kind of the wake-up call is if we don't innovate and don't address these different audiences, and also the lifespan of products and companies actually shrinking. If in 1958 it has been 61 year, then now by 2027 it will be less than 12 years. So it means that we constantly have to think about a changing generational aspect, and of course the audience emerging trends, not the data which is already obvious and clear.
Excellent.
Which should I put on the side?
No, you touched on the acceleration of things. You touched on the technology and the platforms. So it sounds like infrastructure definitely plays a significant role here. Can you tell me a little bit more about the role of infrastructure here?
Yes, so generational aspect, what can actually accelerate the shift in adoption of technology is, of course, infrastructure. So basically, if we look at Nordic markets or Baltic markets where fiber optic penetration, or let's say fast speed internet, is really high, like let's say 75 to 80%, and also the, let's say, older generations will be faster to adopt to new technologies. And I think that not I think, but actually, if we look at the data, then Nordic markets and Baltics are one of the most actually innovative in terms of technology adoption, where on-demand services and OTT are already exceeding, like, let's say, traditional pay TV.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a lot of behavioral complexity tied to the generations as well, too. How should we be thinking about this in terms of strategy?
What is most important, I think that we always have been speaking about content being a king, but with all this complexity and generational aspects, the most important part is actually how do you design for all the 7 generations, and UX becomes, I think, the new monetization tool. So when basically you are putting or distributing the content on your platform, you have to think how the content is going to be discovered or by each of these 7 generations, right?
That's right. So the UX is influencing the business models, the way that we can market, and the kind of products. What are the biggest priorities right now for the user interface?
For user interface, definitely is to be personalized, right? So again, if we go to more traditional digital, not digital kind of segments, then for them it's very important to actually find the TV the way they are used to. So in a very kind of legacy way, but at the same time, you understand that you have one screen, but actually at the screen are 7 generations are looking at. So, at the same time, you have to provide for this younger generations, like, again, better even more. They will be expecting that actually the content is being pushed on them, and that the technology actually can learn what they already want. And I have read somewhere that we spend about 110 hours per year actually searching for the content. And what we have to understand that perhaps more traditional customers are used to that, and they are not going to be, let's say, frustrated with that. But of course, we are going to lose our younger audience if they are not discovering instantly exactly what they want to find on these platforms. So I think content discovery and personalization, and how do you package actually the content for each of these generations are super, super, super important, and one of success formulas going forward. And actually looking back at my telco experience, already in the early days, we were thinking how one content type can be found by basically in 7 different ways, right? So you have a very traditional audience who wants to watch the content, let's say, some series, right, on a linear timeline at 8 o'clock in the evening. But then you have to think also how to find this audience who is already transitioning from linear to on-demand on a catch-up. But at the same time, for a youngsters, if it's not on youngsters, even me, actually, I'm cord cutter already since 2007. You know, if I don't have a content on demand, then you actually are now never going to reach me with probably amazing content type.
So what impact does all of this have for acquisition and retention for platforms?
Yeah, it's a good question. So of course, traditional way of acquisition also is shifting. you can find and speak to your customer over social media, but if they come to your platform and they don't discover the content they want, or they don't feel that the platform actually bringing them experience what they are desiring, then you are going to lose them, because there are so many opportunities where you can actually basically find alternatives, right?
Right. Okay. So Inga, let's talk a little bit more about segmentation. What's the smartest way to approach it today?
So I was talking about cross-generational, and it's a bit of a challenging topic, because like a generational aspect considers that we kind of link it to age, right, and demographics. But at the same time, if we're designing products for the future, what I love to actually use is more, let's say, a contextual segmentation, right? So if I'm actually watching something on the screen with my 10 years old, and perhaps I don't act in a way how in a demographic way. So to find and understand if the customer is tuning on TV because he's tired and wants to escape, or it's just a ritual because he wants to watch like news every evening at 8 o'clock. That's very important aspect. Yeah.
Okay.
Predictive, yes. So basically finding more predictive segments in a way how the customers are behaving.
Got it. Okay. Does that mean that we're also seeing monetization change and shift in this space?
Yeah, of course. I think we all see also from the industries that we are trying to find the new ways to monetize. So also streaming platforms are now entering into advertising, right? And then advertising-based businesses are trying to put on subscription. But one thing which we pivoted also in Latvia, and it's also actually widely popular in Nordic markets, is a point system. So basically where you give a freedom of choice to customer to pay for a content which you want to watch, because with all the super aggregation as well, where like telcos are trying to package different streaming platforms under one subscription, and with fatigue of subscription basically for the customers. So freedom to cherry pick and pay for the content which you actually want to watch, I think is also one of the great ways to monetize the content.
Okay, so basically you're talking about bundling strategies. What are some of the smarter
bundling strategies, but in terms of monetization, right? So basically how you monetize. So bundling is one thing, and again, UX is coming in play. So how easy it's for a customer to tune in and tune out from different bundles, but also in the end of the day, like what is your value like a customer, right? Like why would you subscribe through such bundled offers? So they, like a rule of thumb, it's mostly, of course, cheaper for the end user if you access bundle deals, but also, as we know, there is like probably one or two services which are core, but the rest you tune in and tune out depending on the content. So if the telcos or pay TV operators can offer such freedom of choice for customers to basically have one set subscription fee, and within it, like, so kind of you have your value wallet, right, which you can exchange the services you are using based on your household needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so putting together bundles that are sticky and resilient. So you talked a little bit about some of the best practices that you're seeing there. Are you seeing that some companies are not doing this, some companies are ignoring this? What's happening if they do ignore this?
You mean in terms of super bundling, or in general for for designing for all the 7th generation. I think very rarely actually it's being taken into account for now. Like, how do you design for the future customer, right? So because again, like as I said, so we still have, let's say, luckily we have in Europe quite older demographics, so it's still like majority of our customer base very often. But if we are not going to be ready for this growing segment of youngster demographics and thinking about how to actually speak with them and how to design the UX and UI and also the content bundles, then I think we are going to be out of the game eventually.
A scary thought, indeed. So in this very disrupted media industry, and I don't think we've ever been as disrupted as we currently seem to be, let's talk a little bit about what might be next with the newest generation, with generation beta. You hinted at a little bit about how they're different. What are some of the implications of that, and how do we expect them to, what are they going to be looking for?
You want to take out my crystal ball? Yeah, as I said, I think that will be hyper personalization. So basically, they are not going to ever experience the world before AI. So they will expect that actually all the screens are learning them and understanding them. So when I mean hyper personalization, so it basically means that actually technology learns from them, right? So it's very super intuitive and yeah, so I think that's the most important one. So you will need to design very adaptive ecosystems where actually you can have a hyper personalized feeds for these youngsters, and they definitely will use all the screens before they learn to read or yeah, or maybe even talk, right?
Yep, absolutely. And for leaders in the media space, how can we prepare for these changes that are coming?
All the story is always for me to remind actually the sense of urgency. So by the time the need for change becomes too obvious, it's too late to get going, right? So like we might think that generation beta is only being born today, but actually we have to start designing the products and content offerings for them already now, like before the data again becomes too obvious. Yes, so when your industry is facing change, either you change or you wait until the end, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about sense of urgency from all corners of the market.
Absolutely, but it's often very hard actually conversation. We talk a lot about data, and often we look at the data when it's already really shooting at our face that we have to change something, but how to actually, from forecasting, actually, how can you build several future scenarios and then verify against them? I think it's very important actually also outcome, yes, how to look at the future and how to design for it. So coming from very probable futures to absolute wild cards, right? And sci-fi scenarios.
Yes, definitely. And sticking with urgency, what's one or a few things that media leaders should start doing right now, this week, this month?
Yes, as I said, probably change the mindset from forecasting the future. It's actually a lot. I see still that there is this kind of like forecasting of a 3-year plan, but rather looking at the scenario thinking. So trying to map early signals or trends and design probable, plausible, possible, or absolutely wildcard scenarios going forward for the industry, and they verify against them, I would say, every 6 months. So that's yes, that would be like one probably one of advices. And of course, keep in mind the generational aspect. So yes, Europe is quite aging demographics, but still the youngsters are adopting technologies much faster, right? As we see also at this slide right now. And for a beta generation, it's going to be less than a year actually to learn and adapt all the new technology.
Okay. And are there any practices that you think media leaders should stop doing that you see commonplace right now?
Probably believing that we own the customer
Okay.
or the user. Yeah, because yes, there's so much choice that actually user is in a driving seat, and yes, we can't control them. Yes, or own them. Are we running out of time, Marco?
We are getting close to time, so if you want to offer any final thoughts, Inga, please go ahead.
Okay, maybe three things. So design for emotional relevance, not just age and gender. Remember that UX is everything, so it's a new business model, and you don't have one size fits all. And it's not only about screens, but actually about experience you provide on your platform. And yes, the future belongs to adaptivity, right? So with beta babies being born this year, emotional design, yes, is probably our next strategic differentiator.
Okay, excellent. So we'll turn it over for questions and answers. So please, if anyone has questions, we've got one or two in, but there's time to send in some more. So I'll go with the first one. The first one is, will Gen Alpha be totally reliant on their parental choices of subscription streaming services, such as Netflix, Paramount, Disney, etc.? Or will they just instinctively migrate to fast, free TV services, or more likely AVOD providers like YouTube, TikTok, and so on? And tied to that, how might media brands then behave to secure their attention and loyalty?
Okay, crystal ball. To certain age, I think that kids are really being influenced by their parents' decision. But then again, let's think who are the parents actually of the better generation, and probably look at their pattern right now. I would say that that to keep them engaged in a platform, probably you have to guess what they might be wanting to watch. So again, this personalization, not based on the algorithms, but actually guessing what they already want or what they already expect. I think there will be a lot AI produced content perhaps for them already. Yes, so in short, will the attention spans will be shorter? Probably. That's again with the conversation around Netflix or TikTok. It's a good question. I think the short form is probably going to prevail also for the younger generation. The longer form will be harder and harder to keep the attention, right?
All right. We've got another question that came in, which is asking whether audience segmentation by age is obsolete and whether it should be by mood and lifestyle instead of by age.
I think age is important because it actually affects the lifestyle, right? Because it's a value-based yeah, it generates the values, but at the same time, yes, at the end of the day, you have to actually convert to to behavior segments for sure. So there is like a term constellation segmentation, which I really love. So it's all about behavior. So basically trying to kind of find 4 or 5 distinctive behavior patterns and then to design for them rather than demographics. But at the same time, the age is still playing the role. So we can actually a little bit still predict how the adoption curve will be for technology for the different age groups. But
Okay.
harder and harder for, let's say, digital natives for sure.
Okay. Thank you for that, Inga. It sounds like data and accurate data is still essential for all of this segmentation. And obviously the reason for segmenting is to be as efficient as possible in reaching your market, your target, and engaging them. In closing, I'd like to ask you just to touch on one more thing. You said that media is among the most disrupted industries around right now. Can you just say why or where is that disruption coming from? And you also mentioned that it's moving from disruption to acceleration. And is that different than the slide that you showed us with the product adoption cycle?
That one.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest actually probably shift. So it's not anymore about disruption, but acceleration. So if for last 20 years, we have been kind of climbing technological evolution or advancement is to say, but disruption is all about the shock, right? When Netflix was launched, so it disrupted cable, perhaps also broadcast TV, or smartphones replaced remote, but it still gave us some time to catch up. But when I say acceleration, and what we need to understand that everything is going to move even faster and it will be harder to adopt. So we will have basically much shorter gap to adapt to this technological technological advancements. But again, going back, like how to basically make sense out of it, I think it's four windows, which I always kind of keep to. It's to look at the new customer behavior, not something which is already too obvious. We all know that linear is declining, but try to find some early signals where the shift is starting to happen. Then technology, of course, like how can you use all the technology to basically design more intuitive and better solutions for the future. But and then yes, like competitive, of course, landscape, how it is changing, and if there is like new competitors are emerging, right? And we are not competing just in the same segment. We compete basically for the same eyeballs, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Inga. And I got carried away. We've run a little bit over time, but you've led us through the 7-generation landscape, and I've certainly learned a lot today. So thank you.
Thank you. It's still too short.
Thank you very much. And it's no problem at running over because the majority of people have stayed on, so they were obviously finding it fascinating. So thank you very much. And thanks, Inga, for all your hard work putting all this together for us as well. And you, Marco, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. If anybody has any further questions, you can email me directly and I will forward them over to Inga and Marco. And I will follow up with information on membership and the INSEAD program, etc. this week as well. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. It is almost home time for us all now.
Indeed.
Thank you. Enjoy your day. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.